Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Avery Roberts, and I work in community outreach and engagement for Cure CMD alongside Kelly Berger. We're thrilled to have you all here for Cure CMD's Financial Planning with a Disability webinar. You may or may not know that October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. We are honored to have an esteemed lineup of experts here to talk about financial planning and a bit about how individuals living with disabilities can better navigate financial freedom and independence. As a brief overview of the agenda for today, what you can expect during today's webinar is a focus on gaining a better understanding of financial freedom and learning about how to maintain eligibility for critical programs that promote independence and how to save without penalties. Before we get started, just a couple of reminders. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube in the coming days. If you have any questions for our speakers as we're going along throughout the webinar, you can locate the Q&A feature in your menu at the bottom of your screen. Submit your question there, and we will be sure it is directed to our speakers. We also have closed captioning available. If you're interested in utilizing that, you can click the live transcript or captions button at the bottom of your window to begin the transcription. So now our speakers, I will come back to Jonathan in a minute. We have SARA HART, Senior Advisor at ABLE Today and Executive Director of the Kansas Developmental Disabilities Council, Mark Raymond, the National Outreach Lead of ABLE Today, founder and CEO of the Split Second Foundation, and a disability community member himself. And finally, Deborah McFadden, the CEO of Abilities Count and former United States Commissioner of Disabilities. We so appreciate you all being here with us today. So unfortunately, one of our speakers, Jonathan Greason, had a medical emergency recently and will not be joining us live today. Fortunately, he's okay, but he's just taking some time to himself. So we wish him well and a quick recovery. Jonathan's perspective in his field is unique. He is a proprietor at Jonathan Greason Financial Planning as a licensed certified financial planner professional and lives with muscular dystrophy himself. First, I want to preface with the fact that we are certainly not experts on this on the webinar today. You'll be hearing from the experts soon here, and we'll certainly not come close to Jonathan's insight. However, we still wanted to include some key points to help drive the conversation and kick us off. So please consult your financial advisor to identify the method of support that best suits your unique situation and journey. So especially with a neuromuscular disease involved, it is important to plan and save for the future. We all know that for something as essential as healthcare, that plays a huge role in our lives, living with CMD, it is a large expense. So here are some strategies. Medicaid provides basic medical services and waiver programs to assist with care. Unfortunately, a lot of people in our community are not eligible because of strict income and asset limits that vary state by state. So keep that in mind, but that we have to adhere to, to continue receiving these services. Another strategy is opening an ABLE account. ABLE accounts are savings accounts that work similarly to a 529 college savings account. I won't talk too much on them as I know Mark and Sarah will be diving deeper. A lot of people living with disabilities also rely on other avenues like special needs trusts, whether it be firsthand or third party, so that programs like Medicaid or SSI are not counted as resources. Obviously, we stress to live in the here and now, but especially living with a disability like CMD, prepare and look ahead to the future. So know your rights and understand how your diagnosis can really affect your insurance and eligibility as a pre-existing condition. Consider your options, get familiar with your banking benefits, and gather the support from your that you need from the experts. Establish a budget. Even if you're still living with caregivers who pay bills for you, ask how much different items cost. That way you will understand what it costs to be independent in the future. And just always keep organized, especially now, but then as well as in the future, safe keep some documents, communications, and report changes to all applicable parties. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sarah and Mark to take us through ABLE accounts and current legislation. So I'll pass it over to you, Sarah and Mark.
Thank you, Avery. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Raymond Jr. As Avery mentioned, I'm joined by my counterpart, Sarah, actually my better half. We work on this lovely team promoting ABLE and raising awareness across the country. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today. Just to give you a little bit of background, I had a diving accident 8 years ago that caused paralysis from about my chest down. So I'm a full-time power wheelchair user, and that is how I was introduced to the disability community and inevitably met Sarah doing now the work that we've been doing for the last 2 years. So I think this work is really near and dear to both of us. Sarah has worked in many capacities and wears many, many hats still to this day. Um, but the goal and the purpose of us being here today is to talk a little bit about ABLE accounts and give you just a high level understanding of how ABLE functions, why it exists, how you can use it. And yeah, so Sarah and I also do a podcast. So Sarah, I'm going to treat this a little bit like that and kind of bounce some things back and forth with you.
Let's do it, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone.
Love it. So, Sarah and I work for Able Today, which is kind of housed underneath the National Association of State Treasurers to do this work, thanks to a grant from Wells Fargo. We always like to show them some love. Um, Sarah, you were really instrumental in the beginning of Able. Can you just touch briefly on why the legislation was so important and how it started?
Yes, Mark, and good afternoon, everyone. Sarah Hart, we are excited to be here. Huge, Mark. We have to give a huge shout out to our friends Kelly and Avery for all their hard work in pulling this together.
Yeah.
But kind of just start at the beginning. I've had the opportunity, as Mark knows, to work on the ABLE Act in some form or fashion since 2006, and this is really around the time that the idea, the concept for the ABLE Act really started to get some traction, get some legs. There was a group of five, Mark, you've heard the story, five concerned parents that at the time had very young children with Down syndrome who are very frustrated with the inequities that exist in the system. And for any parents, caregivers, or self-advocates that are joining us here today, you probably know these all too well. One of which is you couldn't save more than $2,000 at any given time if you were accessing benefits like Medicaid or SSI. And so, Mark, after a very long journey, it's never easy to pass things in the halls of Congress, but it took ultimately 8 years and four Congresses to get the ABLE Act across the finish line. And all of the hard work in my past life, in that role, I was the CEO of the National Down Syndrome Society. We really galvanized advocates, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about advocacy in this session, to make their voice heard in essentially every corner of the country, because ultimately when the ABLE Act was kind of pulled together and the legislative framework was in a really good place, we had 85% of the entire Congress support the original ABLE Act. Everybody, I like to say, we're a couple of weeks away from an election. Everybody from Bernie Sanders to Jim Jordan co-sponsored this piece of legislation because it was a common sense idea. It was about giving people with disabilities not a handout, but a hand up and more equity, Mark, in the system to allow people to be able to save for their future, not take any benefits away, and be able to afford more expenses, whether that's related to the disability or just as simple as improving independence, quality of life, and the health of the individual. So that's a little bit about the journey to 2014 when the ABLE Act was signed into law by President Obama on December 19th, 2014. We're getting ready to celebrate 10 years. It's hard to believe.
Crazy times. And in that 10 years, 529, the ABLE Act adjusted or amended the Section 529 of the U.S. Tax Code, creating a vehicle for people with disabilities to be able to save and invest without losing those means tested benefits, right? And so that was the importance of it. The eligibility at the time was 20 anybody long-term disability had to be onset before the age of 26, right?
That's correct, Mark. So we've actually improved the original ABLE Act in the last 10 years 5 times. There's not a lot of pieces of legislation. I know we're going to hear from the former U.S. Commissioner. She can probably attest to this and her remarks. There's not a lot of pieces of disability civil rights legislation that have been updated that many times or modernized. So in 2015, we eliminated the state residency requirement, allowing anybody, no matter what state you lived in, you can open up an ABLE account. And I'm going to drop in the chat here, Mark, our comparison tool that we have at abletoday.org that allows an individual with a disability to go onto our website and compare ABLE plans, because now we have 47 states or 46 states in the District of Columbia that are offering ABLE plans to eligible individuals. So that was 2015. In 2017, we saw some really great improvements to deepen the opportunities that an individual has to save. So if you're a working adult with a disability, you can actually put almost $14,000 in additional monies into your ABLE account on top of the $18,000 a year you can get from any source. So, Mark, as we talk a lot about in our presentations, a great vehicle for adults with disabilities to be able to save their own paychecks,
Yep.
and save for the future. Rollovers, there's a lot of flexibility with ABLE accounts and ABLE plans. You can roll over a traditional 529 if you get that diagnosis a little bit later in life, or Mark, as we talk a lot about, something happens and you have a 529, you can roll that over to an ABLE account without any tax consequences. And then the final piece, Mark, you just alluded to that, is the ABLE age adjustment. So the original ABLE Act, you had to have your disability onset occur before the age 26. And that was a lot of challenges we had back in the day to get the cost down of the bill and work on these improvements that we've carried out over the last several years. So the ABLE Age Adjustment Act actually takes the age of eligibility from that 26 onset to 46 onset. And Mark, you may just jump in here and talk a little bit about why you're so passionate about this work, given your own disability journey.
Yeah, so I think it's so imperative, one, because my accident happened when I was 27. So I wasn't even eligible to sign up for an ABLE account when I did learn about it. And it was right before or the year that the Able Age Adjustment Act was being considered. So it was really cool to be on the front end of that. But two, it also opens the doors for 8 million more people that are eligible to now be able to utilize ABLE accounts. I think those are two really, really big things and important. Real quick, I just want to touch on what you can spend money on your ABLE account. So the qualified disability expenses as they wrote into the legislation was really broad because they really wanted it to be able to, be spent on anything related to the disability experience, whether that was housing or transportation, legal fees, groceries, rent, whatever, going on vacation, even because that is a quality of life improvement. And quite honestly, a frequently asked question for us. Another really frequently asked question is, can we use that money to pay for our caregiver to come on vacation? The answer to that is also yes. So they were really intentional about again, I think those expenses being just broad and related to the disability and life experience. Sarah, I want to ask you about the Home and Community-Based Services Relief Act and what impact it will have on the community.
Yes. So home and community-based waiver services, or better known as HCBS in our disability world, as many of you know, is an essential benefit that individuals need in order to have more access to their communities. We know there's over 61 million people with disabilities that live in across the country that span individuals that are kind of under the age of 65 that are mark eligible for these state-based benefits. And as we all know, a lot of these programs that people with disabilities navigate are blended and braided. They're blended and braided from resource from the federal government and from the state government. This is, as Mark and I talk about this all the time, coming from Kansas, and Mark, you in Louisiana. We tend to come from states that have not figured this out. I'm sure we're going to hear from Deborah a little bit later, coming from Maryland, who has figured it out a little bit better than us here in the South and in the Midwest, right, Mark?
Right.
So, home and community-based waivers, what this piece of legislation would do is it would provide dedicated Medicaid funds to states for 2 years to stabilize their HCBS service delivery networks, recruit and retain HCBS direct care workers, and then hopefully the goal is to help meet the long-term services and supports needs of people eligible for those Medicaid home and community-based waiver services. Just to kind of take it one step further, Mark, and put it into the context of what we're battling here in the state of Kansas, is that we've seen over the last several years our wait list for individuals that have intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as our physical disability waiver service. Those wait lists have grown exponentially. And so our number one priority, putting my DD council hat, has been working with our state legislature to get that wait list down to zero. And we've certainly had to work in a bipartisan fashion to educate our legislature about what Medicaid is vis-a-vis what HCBS services are and what they do and how they meet the individual with a disability where they are. So that certainly has been a challenge. We were very successful for the first time in over 5 years in increasing funding and getting 500 new Kansans off our wait list and getting HCBS services this past summer. And then we're going to go back next year to work toward a longer term strategy to get that wait list down to zero. Pieces of legislation like this, and certainly one that I support and the DD Council networks have supported, are vitally important to also address. Mark, and you and I talk about this all the time, and you may kind of jump in on split second and what you do. We also have a shortage of workers that are dedicated to the disability workforce. We're modernizing our rates for direct care workers, for personal care attendants, and other individuals that support that person with a disability, and not just navigating this complex system, but helping somebody just maybe get out of bed in the morning so that they can move to their competitive job or move into a role in the community. And a lot of that support comes in the form of other human beings. And we need to treat and reward folks that are working in this profession with a true career ladder, making sure that those individuals have access to their own healthcare, access to their own retirement, and ability to have their own quality of life. So it's certainly something that we're tackling here in Kansas, as well as working with our federal partners to implement strategies to address this crisis.
Well, you hit a few things on the head, because the next question I had was about why folks should care and about current legislation and updated policies. It's because that's where all the changes that we want and see in society are made. And a lot of times I think things get caught in this very politically polarized environment, and good bills don't get passed because of it, right? Sarah, I know you've seen this a bunch, but that's also a result of us, people not in the system, not calling our representatives from all sides of the line and pushing everybody to the direction that needs to be driven, right? When I think about like advocacy and the work that Split Second Foundation does, Split Second is another organization that I run. We provide a lot of services for families impacted by disability, but we also do a lot of advocacy work. And I'm constantly educating our clients on what is going on from a legislative standpoint in our state so that they could know who they need to call to support or um or not support a bill, right? Uh
It's it's so true, Mark. I think a lot of whether you're advocating at the state level or in the halls of Congress in DC, a lot of these members of Congress are an inch deep and a mile wide. They're tackling a lot of different issues. A lot of things are thrown at them from various different topical areas and issue areas. We don't have enough champions that have either the lived experience of, navigating this complex system as an individual with a disability or a family member or a caregiver. And that's why it's so important to look for ways to make your voice heard. And, no matter what your partisan beliefs are, putting those aside and utilizing these opportunities to educate on why pieces of legislation like the HCBS Relief Act are, why continuing the sunset provisions, Mark, that we're working on with the Enable Act that Senator Schmidt and Senator Casey have also co-led. And then, Mark, you should talk about your Roll With Me campaign, what you've been doing throughout Louisiana with governors and mayors to educate and almost show, not tell, some of the, accessibility barriers that you're working to address.
yeah, Roll With Me was a really fun way to advocate. And it was just one of those ideas that popped up, somebody was like, dude, do this. And when we did the first one, I'll never forget Michael Heck, he's the CEO of the economic development engine for the city, Greater New Orleans Incorporated. He was like, dude, this is such a visceral experience. Just in the first like 5 minutes, trying to figure out how to navigate a wheelchair, how to why the sidewalks are slanted, right? Because it pulls, and just hearing like all of the takeaways that he had ended up fueling like literally everybody that was anybody to want to do it. Because I think that there is like this genuine um fear and curiosity as to what the disabled experience is like. Fear in the sense that most people are just scared of being disabled themselves, but also curiosity because if I am, let me see what this might be like on the front end. But what ended up coming from it was just micro changes everywhere. Like Michael's Class A office building didn't have a handicapped accessible door. So he got them to write into his new lease that they would improve that. When I did the governor, we talked about housing. I mean, we talked about everything, but housing was a big one. And how can we incentivize developers to design spaces that are more accessible? So it was an effective, fun advocacy campaign that it's still resulting in changes. Congressman Carter got $6 million for the RTA to figure out how to make the St. Charles streetcar accessible. Right? It was a lot of things that came from sitting down with people, putting them in your shoes, and giving them a really clear understanding of the need, right? And I think that was a very bipartisan thing as well.
Uh,
Um,
so absolutely brilliant. I loved watching all of them because I think every guest that you had a revelation that they probably didn't realize or appreciate through your own lived experience.
Yeah. And I think in that though, in speaking to this community, like how can you add support to the legislative efforts and future federal programs? The best way is for you to know who your elected officials are, have meetings with them. Like you want them to take your phone call. Um, and when bills like this come out, you want to make sure that you're vocal about supporting them. Uh, and
Yeah,
being with
I
other.
dropped in the chat, Mark, just a one pager that kind of describes that HCBS Relief Act in a little bit more detail. I'm sure our friends at Cure CMD also will push out, information when it's time to kind of activate the network and, stay close to those leaders like Kelly and Avery that are really, carrying the torch for the rare disease and the disability communities.
Yeah. All right, so now we got to plug the Able Today show.
Oh, we have to. I'm going to
Why,
drop it in the chat as well.
why should everybody watch the show, Sarah?
Well, so Mark and I co-host the Able Today podcast and show. We launched this earlier this year. It's hard to believe we're on month 10. We've had some really incredible guests, I should say, throughout the year. We've had our friends from Autism Speaks. We've had the Chief Accessibility Officer of Wells Fargo. We had one of the architects, Mark, of the Americans with Disabilities Act,
Yeah.
Sadie Swift Carino, in a two-part series, who really helped galvanize and build the framework which ultimately became the ADA. And she kind of talks through her journey in the 1980s up until that signing. And then just this week, Mark, we had our friends Kelly and Avery from Cure CMD on. We have fun. We talk about able accounts, what's happening, the latest and greatest accomplishments of what's happening in our space, in our community. But we also talk about current events and mark disability journalism, pieces of legislation like the HCBS Relief Act. I know we're going to hear about it a little bit later in this webinar series, the SSI marriage penalty, what's happening. And then we've really had the opportunity this month to celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month and had John Cronin and Mark Cronin from John's Crazy Sock. So a lot of fun episodes, and you're going to learn something new because I know we do every chance we get.
Yeah, I'll say we focus on real information, but also great stories and what we've organically built in that community is just special, and I'm excited to see it continue to grow. Um, Lastly, Sarah, they want to know what's next for both of us. What projects are we working on?
Well, you jump in first, Mark. I know you're always up to something.
I gotta find my scroll with my project list on it. It's around here somewhere.
They usually come at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Launching, opening, and expanding a new building with Split Second Foundation, growing the Able Today brand and doing more outreach. I think if we could really set some lofty goals, I think we'll achieve, we'll soar. That's the big things for me.
Yeah, I'm working on kind of like what does next year look like federally for ABLE? Like what are some of those big ABLE 3.0 ideas that we can kind of pull together? And then kind of at the state level, kind of to build upon the importance of HCBS and waiver services for the community. Mark, I've shared this with you, but we are looking at introducing a comprehensive piece of legislation that really tackles the workforce crisis, not just solely focused on direct support professionals, but really holistically. What can we do across the state of Kansas? And we have a lot of rural communities, especially out west and out in western Kansas, that don't have a lot of providers and don't have a lot of support. So we're looking at modernizing our rates and then putting out some very provocative solutions to address that career ladder. for people and future professionals to really want to go in to this community and be rewarded for their service, support, and education. So it's going to be called Kansas Cares, and we're in the kind of final stages of pulling that together and getting ready to roll up our sleeves in Topeka and taking that on. And we're really hoping that other states can be able to replicate some of those solutions so we can provide more support and meet people where they are. And a lot of that happens at the local level.
Thank you so much, you two. It's always such an incredible time hearing both of your insights, and Kelly and I are so grateful to be able to call you guys friends. And we're so looking forward to seeing what the future holds for you guys and Able today, and both of you personally.
Thanks, Avery.
Thank you.
So next we're going to be hearing from Deb on understanding SSI.
So this was great listening to Sarah and Mark talk about everything they're doing. And Sarah, as a former commissioner of disabilities, I ran the DD councils, and listening to its policy change, it's just exciting to be in that role. But you certainly have your podcast, your bantering back and forth is just, it's fun to listen to. How you both play off of each other going, how about this? How about this? So you've got a new listener in me. So look forward to getting the new one. So these are some of the words, and I'm going to try to put a lot of things in, just take words that we need to know about. Like, well, we've heard about the ABLE account or special needs, but what about loan forgiveness and SSI or SSDI and FAFSA, Medicaid, Medicare, voc rehab, the golden ticket, it's kind of my word, and TPD. So I'm going to, is it true? Can I really go to college for free if I have a disability? Is it true that I can get everything paid for, tuition, room, board, and books? And is it true I can get about, well, it's actually be like $967 a month in cash? Is it true? This is me many years ago. I was paralyzed from the chest down, one of these rare diseases of if you don't die, you'll never walk again. I spent 4 years in a power chair and 8 on crutches. I don't use them now unless I'm at an event where I have to stand a long time. I was in grad school at the time and got a letter from my university. I was a straight A student, number one in my class, and saying, because you're handicapped, we won't graduate you. Back before there were enough laws to help protect. I'm the former United States Commissioner of Disabilities. I ran the DD councils, the protection advocacy system, university affiliated programs, number of things. One of the main authors of the ADA. Lots of people helped out on this. Missed that time. It was a fun time. I'm going to talk about my three of my girls, two of my girls, Hannah and Tatiana, both have disabilities, and Ruthie's in nursing school now. This is Hannah. Hannah has a PFFD, proximal femoral focal deficiency. She's an above the knee amputee with no hips. Both of my girls did their undergraduate and graduate degrees at University of Illinois. Hannah used to do wheelchair racing. She now does rock climbing. And if there are parents on this call, you will understand when Hannah sent me this, when she was in Switzerland, this without the arrow, I said, oh, it's beautiful. She goes, look closer. That's me climbing on the wall. She's ranked third in the world as a one-legged rock climber. I said, I'm really glad you sent that to me after you came down from it. And this is my other daughter, Tatiana. She has spina bifida. Tatiana is considered the fastest wheelchair runner in the world. She actually came home. She's got 22 Paralympic medals, came home from Paris Paralympics, and she now is the most decorated track male or female athlete in America, and I think tied for first place. She's won the Chicago, London, Boston, New York marathons multiple times. I use them as examples because both of my girls were on SSI and voc rehab. We know the disadvantages of having a disability, that's clear to us, but there are a few advantages. And although I'd love to talk about the ADA because I'm very proud of that, I'm going to talk about two of the older programs, Social Security and vocational rehabilitation. Social Security. Social Security, SSDI and SSI. What are these? Well, SSDI requires that you have work experience, at least 10 quarters, or if a parent has passed away or there's low income in the families, you can get it when you're younger. And SSI, you have to have limited income. You heard both Mark and Sarah talk about this, and I think Avery mentioned it. You can't have more than 2,000 in assets. But both of these require you have a disability. I'm specifically going to talk about SSI for this, supplemental security income. This is about everything you can't do. You can't walk, you can't go up and down stairs. And we never lie when we're talking about these programs. We tell the truth, but the truth is based on the norm. So if I asked my daughter Hannah, who's an amputee, Hannah, can you walk? She'd say yes. And my answer is, no, you can't walk. You use a prosthetic leg. Hannah, can you go up and down these stairs? Yes. No, you can't, Hannah. You hop. Of course, it was Tatiana. She'd lean back in her chair and go down the stairs in her wheelchair. But we base everything on the norm, and it's what you can't do. If you can get approved for these programs, I call it the golden ticket, because once you have this designation, you're eligible for many other programs. Vocational rehabilitation, voc rehab, DOORS, Texas Workforce, all the same thing, but vocational rehabilitation. This is about everything you can do. I can leap tall buildings in a single bound. I can rock climb with a prosthetic leg. These two programs are diametrically opposed to each other. SSIs can't, voc rehab can. I put this up here because you have to remember which hat you're wearing. Am I talking about SSI? Oh, I want to talk about everything I can't do. Oh, I'm talking about voc rehab. I want to talk about everything I can do. Now, SSI, you have to have a permanent disability. Yes, my daughter's amputated leg is not growing back. It is income-based. You cannot have more than 2,000 in assets. Now, you did hear both Mark and Sarah say that excludes having an ABLE account. I do it when everybody turns 18. Technically, it's the month following your 18th birthday because Social Security deems that you're an adult then. SSI says gainful employment's not possible. You are dependent. It's everything you can't do. And I'm going to use bad language now for a moment. This is the crippled, lame, and infirm law. This law came about when, oh, you're born with spina bifida. Nah, you're never going to work. You're going to live in an institution, and we, societies, we're going to have to take care of you. That's when SSI came about. We're going to have to take care of you. It shows that you are dependent. But I'd say everybody on this call, if you have muscular dystrophy, you are eligible for SSI, depending on your assets, and I'll get to that. Now, vocational rehabilitation, again, you have to have a permanent disability, and it is also income-based. When you're in high school, you can have this, and it's not based on your income. But the moment you get out of high school, it is based on income. But this says, oh, gainful employment is possible. That's what voc rehab wants to do. This is can. So again, SSI, what you can't do, voc rehab, what you can do. SSI, what do you get? You get about, well, $943 a month. I think it's $946. It'll go up in January. That's what you get from it. So if you go on it, you're given basically a check, an automatic deposit into your account every month. Vocational rehabilitation, permanent disability, income-based, but they help pay for tuition fees, room, board, and books. Bottom line is we want to get you employed. When my daughter Tatiana went to college, they offered her a full ride. At that time, it was $50,000. And I said, why are you offering her so much money? The school said, nobody says, how come you're giving us so much money? I said, no, how come you're giving her so much? Why don't you give her half and I can get the other half through VR? And I walked around and found out only 3 other students knew about these programs. These programs are there for us to take advantage of for the things we need. Again, SSI can't, voc rehab can. I would tell you, both of my daughters were on these programs. They're no longer on them because they're both gainfully employed. But I will tell you, Hannah went on SSI. She turned 18 in high school. She went 5 years undergraduate school and 2 years graduate school. We got $80,000 in cash. Now, she can't keep it. You can put it into an ABLE account. I charged her for rent. Sometimes I charge her just to be her mother, which, as we know, parents, it's very expensive to be our kids' mothers. You cannot keep it. And when we talk about what's coming up, we in the disability community have been fighting this for decades to say $2,000, you've got to get the limit increased. And really for decades. We have, and it was a 2,000 flat. We have a bill up again, once again, to raise it to $10,000, and we have an clause in there to go do cost of living increases. It has failed, so I know the DD councils are very active in this and pushing forward. We've got to get this passed. But right now, you cannot have more than 2,000 in assets. Again, can't and can. And the reason I put Tatiana up here is she was in the newspaper all the time. She won the Chicago, London, Boston, New York marathons and was in the news and on TV. But she qualified because of spina bifida. But we had to talk about what she couldn't do. In 2022, the statistics for Social Security is that they denied 87% of people who applied for Social Security the first time. 87%. I think in 2023, it's 84%. But in other words, they deny people. I have people who call me. I have somebody who has SMA who called me, and she has been denied for 2.5 years. She's been trying to get this. Just because you say, but I have muscular dystrophy, I should qualify for this. Yes, you should. But the system is set up to make it difficult for people. And this is problematic. But everybody, again, on this call, dealing with muscular dystrophy qualifies. It's how you can work the system. Again, and I keep putting this up here, SSI can't, voc rehab can. It is cognitive dissonance of how we talk about these programs. But if you get on SSI, you get on voc rehab. I put this up. They need to speak my language. You've got to speak SSIEs and voc rehabese. You have to speak it the right way in order to qualify. Now, when I say college just ahead, we know college costs are rising. For vocational rehabilitation, you can, remember, it's to help you get a job. So if you said, I want to be an auto mechanic, they'll help you with that. Oh, I want to be a hairdresser, they'll help you with that. For purposes of this, I'm going to use college as an example. So let's say in-state college is about $25,000, out of state it's double. So, excuse me, let's say you wanted to go out of state, $50,000. Well, voc rehab, what would you pay if I was going in state? Well, we might pay you about we might help you with about $24,000 in expenses. SSI is a federal program. It's the same for everybody. Voc rehab is different per state. Similar. It's a federal program, but there's some limits on it. But in this example, about $24,000. So the differential is $26,000. Well, how can you get this paid for? Well, remember I said there are some advantages of having a disability. First of all, if you're applying for college, you have to fill out FAFSA. I could get Bill Gates' kids on this program. We could get them on this. So if you're saying, well, we make too much money, you have to fill out the FAFSA. This is done every October, although last year they redid it. There were problems. Hopefully they've gotten the kinks worked out. It'll be December to apply if you're going to school in the fall. But this tells whether you get grants meaning free money, and loans, money that has to be paid back. Although, I'll talk about that. For FAFSA, the student gets offered two loan options, the subsidized and unsubsidized loan. Parents are offered a Parent Plus loan, and then depending on the family's income, you may be offered a Pell Grant. which I think is up to about a little over 7,000 this year. So what are the other ways we can make up that $26,000 difference? Well, we can use savings. You can use the 529, loans, grants, scholarships, voc rehab, SSI. Watch this. I don't want anybody to use their savings. If you have a 529, as I said, put it in the ABLE account. Loans, don't take out any loans. And scholarships, do not waste your time applying for scholarships, except unless they're merit-based. And if they're merit-based, the reason is because voc rehab is a second payee, meaning they will say, did you get a scholarship? For example, did you get $5,000 from the local firemen's association? Well, if they said we're going to give you 20,000, then you got 5,000 there, it'd be 20,000 minus 5,000. We're only giving you 15,000. However, they cannot subtract unless it's merit-based. I mean, it cannot subtract if it's merit-based. So if you got a $25,000 merit scholarship, and by the way, this year I have 2 students I'm working with, they got $38,000 in merit. They can't subtract that. Voc rehab, there's grants. Of course, they'll subtract the Pell Grant as well. Now, remember I said there are 2 loans that the student gets, subsidized and unsubsidized. This is one of the advantages. This is what I want you to remember, TPD, Total and Permanent Disability Loan Discharge. This year, it'll be $6,500. This is like the greatest thing. You're offered this, and you will get this waived. So when you fill out FAFSA and you see student subsidized and unsubsidized loan, take it. Because this program will allow it to be forgiven. So based on this, this is kind of how I see it, and I count on everybody going for 5 years. You should get about 60,000 in cash, voc rehab 120, that loan discharge, you're approaching $250,000. You get merit on the low end, 5,000 a year, you're definitely over $250,000. These 2 programs are really important. Now, I will tell you this, that there are some schools, University of Illinois is one of them, that if you're getting support there, you can get up to $20,000 for PCA help, personal care attendant help, in addition to all of this. So this is where we want to look. It's hard to get that PCA help, but a number of places of voc rehab will help supplement that. I have to do a little bit of, if you haven't watched Rising Phoenix, it's on Netflix. Yes, that's my daughter in the middle. She's in it, one of the producers. It's a story of the Paralympics. It won 2 Emmys. Highly recommend you watch it. So it's a great movie on there. And also everybody on there, although they're not all of them are U.S. citizens, but if they were, they would all qualify for these programs. Some other resources are Accessible College, Annie Tolkien. It's accessiblecollege.com. And the other one is Retire Secure for Parents of a Child with a Disability. If you go on disabledchildplanning.com, it's a great book. It's a bit of an encyclopedia. It's thick. I wrote a chapter in there, but he talks about ways that parents can help save for their kids. He has a number of these talks that are recorded that you can go and listen for free. And this is my information. I help people get these programs and talk about other things, legal issues. When your child turns 18, you need to have power of attorney for health and these things. But this is my information. Those programs are great. We should all apply for them. We are not only eligible, but it helps us get employed and helps us with financing. Anyway, that's it.
I just wanted to mention CMD's advocacy team. A common theme that has come out throughout this webinar is how important it is to advocate. to our legislators more specifically. A lot of the topics that have come up today have legislation connected to them, like the Able Age Adjustment Act, the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act, the HCBS Relief Act, and we've seen personally, especially, how important it is to add our personal experiences to the fight to get these bills passed, that would really improve our quality of life, more specifically within financial planning, while living with a disability. So we invite you to come join the team, to come maybe even learn a little bit more about the team, and kind of join the fight to advocate for these bills and this legislation to get passed that would positively impact our lives and the community's needs. And so you can check out a little bit more about the team at curecmd.org/advocacy, or you can email us at advocacy@curecmd.org to learn more. And I think I don't want to go on so much about this more, but really advocacy can take place and however large you have the time for. It can be through an action alert that can take 5 minutes or less, or you can come and advocate to your legislators in DC during like Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill that takes place every February. So that's just a little bit more on the Cure CMD advocacy team that I wanted to mention after kind of hearing that is just such a common theme related to this topic. And now I'll pass it over to Kelly to kick off the audience Q&A.
Really great. So you have a lot of questions coming in. I appreciate everyone wanting to interact here. I'm going to go ahead and direct the first questions that are able centered to Mark and Sarah here. If you guys can pop on. Our first able question is, can you roll over an annuity? Oh, sorry. Can you roll over an annuity into an able account without a tax disadvantage?
I can attempt to take this one because this is a really good question. So anytime you're taking money out of an existing retirement vehicle, annuity, or I think Donna also had a similar question with a 403B. Anytime you're taking money out and putting it in an able account, you're still going to have that tax consequence of shutting down the annuity, shutting down the 403B, but you can move all that money into an able account. So if you have found yourself in a situation where you need to be eligible for SSI, like some of the benefits that Deborah went through, or you need to get qualified for Medicaid, all of these programs are means tested. So they're going to look at how much money you have in a bank account, how much money you have in a retirement account, an annuity, a 403B, whatever it might be. The only time assets are protected from having Medicaid or SSI come back and look at that is when it's in a special needs trust or when it's an enable account. And I really appreciated Deborah's comments about, weaving able into that, because that was the whole goal, was to protect any money, whether you have $5,000 in your able account or the limit in Kansas is $475,000. You can never lose your Medicaid. Your SSI can be put in jeopardy once the able account reaches $100,000 in assets. You don't become ineligible for SSI. It's really just up to you and your family at that point and where you are in your life to decide, to the great points that Deborah made, is that monthly check still really important to your financial position, your financial kind of budgetary scenario? Or are you saving up for a big expense? Like Mark and I just met an individual who happens to be blind, who just purchased his own home out of his able account. Like, are you saving for a big expense or a wheelchair or to modify a home? And then once that able account goes under the $100,000 threshold, is what I call it, that monthly check is reinstated. I don't know, Mark, if I missed anything.
I think you covered everything and some.
All right. Well, I had to add some more to it.
Right. And this next question kind of piggybacks on that. You mentioned that 403B, that's also in the same line. Can you roll that over without the tax penalty?
Yeah, so you're gonna always take the tax penalty on these existing tools, but then you could put it into enable account. The only time that tax penalty currently exists is in that legislation that we passed in 2017 that allows for a 529 rollover into enable account without any tax penalty. That was outlined in legislation that passed in 2017, and we're working to extend that because it's set to sunset along with that other able to work provision.
All right. And this next question is for SSI. So I don't know if Deborah wants to take this. So regarding paying rent on SSI, how do you handle the issue if the calculated rent with the SSI guidelines would be way above the total SSI payment?
Can't do it. The max I can charge is $450. That's it. So you cannot. This is a problem with SSI. The max this year they can get is $943 a month. When I work with families, I start off getting them $628 a month because that's all, they don't have any money to pay rent. And so once they start getting that money, then we notify Social Security saying they are now paying rent, $450 a month, and that can get it up to $943. But it really, is there any place that anyone knows that you can rent a room for for $450 a month? No, but I'm just telling you, these are the rules. And as someone said, but I want to charge. No, these are the rules. But it's not fair they can only have $2,000. These are the rules. And again, we in the disability community, we've been fighting to get this raised. But right now, the max you can charge is $450 a month. And I will tell everybody that, so when Hannah was doing this, or Tatiana, I think the max is 300. But anyway, for $450 a month, that includes utilities, they pay for their own food, and that's the same amount I would charge basically a stranger off the street. And when you say that's not what I would do, those are the rules. Those are the rules. And this is it. So everybody, I know there are some people who've said my son is on it, but not getting the max. They need to pay rent. $450 a month. Includes utilities, they pay for their own food.
All right, great. Thanks for that explanation. And these next couple of questions are based on, I guess, more in depthly what does Voc Rehab do within the programs? So one general question is, how do you qualify for Voc Rehab?
Yeah, and I'll expand on that answer too. I see a couple there. So vocational rehabilitation, remember I said SSI is a golden ticket. So some of your children may have Voc Rehab while they're in high school. By the way, that ends when they graduate from high school. Not that Voc Rehab does, but they'll say, well, we pay for it while you're in high school. But now you have to qualify for it and it will be income based. So Voc Rehab will say, yeah, we'll help you pay for school. Parents, let's see your financial resources. Oh, you make too much. We'll be a cheerleader. I don't want you to be a cheerleader. I want you to help pay for school. So that's why I say you've got to get SSI first, because then it doesn't go on the parent's income. That's the first thing. When you contact Voc Rehab's purpose is to get the person employed. So if you say, well, I want to go to college. Oh, really? What do you want to study? History. History's not a job. I want to study philosophy. Philosophy's not a job. Oh, so you have to say, so they're going to say, what do you want to be? Really, at 18, I don't know what I want to do when I grew up. But you have to say, I want to be a teacher. Really, why? Because of these reasons. And if I want to be a teacher, then I need to get my bachelor's degree. Now, I will tell you, I worked with somebody who told me, I want to be an accountant. Voc Rehab said, why? Well, my mother, father, and grandfather are all accountants. I got to do some volunteer work. And Voc Rehab said, oh, you've got the grades, we'll do that. He called me at the end of his first semester and said, I can't stand it. Get me out of it. You can change your mind on it, but you can't say, I don't know, give me a couple semesters. Well, then why should I, Voc Rehab, pay for you? So when you apply for Voc Rehab, you have to say, this is what I need. You can't, by the way, you can't say I want to be a neurosurgeon. They're not going to pay for that, or a law school. They're going to pay for the lowest educational level that they can get you to get a job. So you have to be clear on that. And two, when you talk about driving, well, I want to drive. I have one father said, yeah, my kid wants to drive him. He's a guy. He needs to go out with girls. Voc Rehab is not going to pay for your son to go out and get dates with girls. Why you need to drive is to get a job. So I need to learn how to drive so I can get a job. Remember, every time you talk about Voc Rehab, it's about employment. So, and somebody asked, but they're not paying for adaptive hand controls. Voc Rehab's whole mission is to say, get him a job, get a job, get a job, get a job, get a job. I will tell you, I helped one of the people get $106,000 adaptations for their car. They're not going to buy the car. The parents said, but now we got to buy a car. Well, they're not going to pay for the car. But let's get the adaptations there. But it was all about getting a job.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that answered a lot of other questions on how to receive funding for
Oh,
adaptive
here's,
driving through Voc Rehab. So,
I put my, if somebody asked if they could see it again, on abilitiescount.com, that's my website. The only thing that I put on there is my next seminars. That's all, but that's it. So.
and then I think these next two questions are more about based on ABLE accounts. So if we are funding a 529 for college, should I instead put that in an ABLE account given college funding you outlined?
Definitely. Well, and it depends. And Kit, I'll drop in our emails in the chat. I'd be curious to just peel back that onion a little bit more with you individually or offline. But if even if college is an option, you can fund college as a disability qualified expense out of your ABLE account. Mark walked through some of those disability qualified expenses. So absolutely. The way I look at it is an ABLE account for an individual that meets the criteria or has that diagnosis of disability is meant to be utilized over the life, where that 529, that traditional account, is meant to be utilized up until those college and university days. So if you are a person with a disability, having your ABLE account and having the monies protected in your ABLE account for Medicaid or SSI. And, Deborah did a great job talking about how at 18, your kind of that life changes for the individual and what you are eligible for, what you navigate. My gut would tell you that, rolling it over to an ABLE account for your son might be the best situation, but I'm happy to also talk offline with you.
Okay, great. And then I think this is a parent with a son with a disability. They are wondering what type of account they should set up so that his son won't lose his disability. That was an incorrect question. I think he just means eligibility. So what kind of account would you suggest setting up so that he won't be disqualified for his services?
And again, I think Deborah, you
Yeah.
touched on this. It's going to depend on your age. So opening up an ABLE account, I think is really imperative. I just worked with a mom who has an 8-year-old in Western Kansas the other day, and her son is already on our HCBS or IDD waiver wait list, which right now is 10 years in Kansas. We're working on lowering that. But we opened up an ABLE account for her 8-year-old because, preparing for 10 years from now, when your whole financial picture changes at 18, when you start to be that dependent and qualify for these services based on the individual's income, not the parent's income. And Deborah, you may jump in there and talk a little bit more specifically about your expertise.
Yeah, and again, I would suggest getting that book. You can get it on Amazon, Retire Secure, for parents with children with a disability, or look on disabledchildplanning.com. I suggest maybe establishing a special needs account. It is a good vehicle when you pass to put money into. I will tell you, I had a family that I worked with. Grandpa died and left, and this is a family of very moderate means. This student was on SSI and was getting voc rehab for school. Grandpa left him $300,000, and I said, "Don't take it, don't take it." And the father said, "But he's got to have this." I said, "Well, who's the executor?" And the father said, "Well, I am." I said, "Well, don't release it until he's done with school." He said, "That would make me a bad executive director." And I went, "Uh-huh." Like, okay, but don't give the money. They hadn't, Grandpa should have set up a special needs account, because you can put some more funds in there. I'm a fan of the ABLE account, but for this particular vehicle, if when you pass away, it's a good vehicle to have. I might not fund it. I will tell you, Social Security, SSI is taking between 11 and 15 months for approval right now. 11 and 15 months. I will tell you, I talked to South Carolina. Friday. They are working on August 2023 cases. They're 14 months behind before they even get it. I will tell you, for the most part, I get people with muscular dystrophy approved within 2 to 10 days for Social Security. I helped to write some of the regs, so I know some of the things you do, but it's you just want to get on this program. I think that, but I tell people, don't fund it yet, because when Social Security asks, "Do you have a special needs or ABLE account?" Remember, they don't count against you. But if you haven't applied for it, I like to say, wait until we get approved, then fund it, just because it makes it faster. But again, I highly recommend that book, and I'll try to put the link in here. For where you can go to some of those financial planning questions. And remember, here's another comment about the legal things. When your child turns 18, they are an adult. Maybe not from our point of view as parents, but legally they are an adult. And one of the moms said they used some of these legal services to get a power of attorney written. I don't like those for our kids. My neighbor, his son is able-bodied. If he breaks an arm, he's away at college. Okay, they're doing that. But you go in the hospital, and our kids are competent to make a decision. So I like them to be written in a particular way that says, even though they're competent, I too can make a decision. Law firms around the country don't like that, because it's a very, very powerful statement in there. But again, we have children that have certain people have misperceptions about our kids and their competency. So those are somebody else. So approval is turn 18 in June.
Yeah, we should address that question. So you have someone that said their daughter turned 18 in June, applied for SSI in August.
Can you tell me what state?
It's taking 12 months. Should she apply
Emily?
for big rehab or wait?
Yeah, what state? I can tell you. They're taking Florida.
Florida.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I'm telling everybody on this call, your child has muscular dystrophy, which this is what this call is. I'm getting them approved in 2 to 10 days. So there's a way to go about it. So when they're taking 12, and by the way, approval taking 12 months, again, you heard South Carolina, before they even get to it, it's 12 months. Here's the thing. So should you apply for voc rehab now? Well, voc rehab has a list of things you have to give. And one of those things is the parent's income. Now, I tell parents we're going to be non-compliant on some things, i.e. giving your income tax statement. Because remember, I said I could get Bill Gates' kids approved for this. Once they have SSI, then it doesn't matter. So she turned 18 in June. You didn't say if she's applying for college for the fall, you can wait and apply. And Florida's a great program. They're one of the good states, not like the state of Maryland where it's problematic where I live. But again, if she applies now, they're going to ask for your income, and depending on your income, they'll say she's approved we will work with her, but we're going to be a cheerleader. I want you to be a cheerleader. I want you to pay for college. So I think it depends, Emily. If it's the fall, I would wait to apply till maybe February. Hopefully, she will get approved sooner than that, but it should not be taking. It shouldn't be taking 12 months, especially for somebody with muscular dystrophy. And this is the cognitive dissonance. Remember, I said we're talking about can't. I'm talking about can't. And as parents, we want to say, but they can, they can, they can. But it's about can't, can't, can't. So I might wait, Emily, or to maybe February or March to apply to see if you have it.
We're going to put a final call on questions here. They keep coming in. All right, so final two. One is, do you mind repeating regarding power of attorney for my 20-year-old who has MD incompetent? I want to get power of attorney for medical care. How do I do that? Some doctor offices have him sign a paper. What is the process?
Yeah. So a lot of places will have them sign papers, but each of the states require, they have some different things for you to put in per state regulations. But I like putting in the statement that says, for example, my mother has since passed, but she had dementia. So the power of attorney was, I'm making the decisions for my mother because she's not competent. That's how power of attorney decisions are 99% of the times written. But for our kids, it should be so-and-so has power of attorney for health decisions, whether I'm competent or not, and may make the same decisions as if they were me. And I will tell you, if you bring that language to your local attorney's office, they will not like it because it is too powerful of a document. But again, for our kids, they're competent. But given a situation where they're in the hospital and not feeling well, they trust us to make the decisions for them. And so I do believe that everybody on this call should have that power of attorney for their kids once they turn 18. You can't get doctor's information for them. You call up. You know, my daughter, and by the way, she said I can share this. Tatiana is almost 36 years old. The catheter company that has to call every month for catheters, they call me. I go, Tatiana, how old will you be before they quit calling me? Well, she's traveling all the time competing. But I need a power of attorney to say, yeah, she needs this catheters. It's the same thing. So you should have that. And then one to just, she's in college now using a 529. Emily, we should talk offline. Your daughter should be approved immediately and should October. If you can get it approved differently, she would be eligible to get financial support come January. Voc Rehab is not retroactive. Social Security is retroactive. So for example, if they took 10 years to make a decision, they're going to give you 10 years back pay. Voc Rehab is not. But again, you have to do it right. And it's so easy. Again, it's like the woman that called me. She has spinal muscular atrophy. She's in a power chair with full-time attendant care, and she has been denied for 2.5 years. Really? I can guess some of the mistakes that were made. So,
A final question, more of advice-based, and this is open to anyone. So, a lot of people have asked to like toying with the fact of should they try to gain employment to start their independence, or do they risk losing their benefits? How do you feel about, or what would you suggest toying that line of trying to be independent and get out there versus being scared and
I answer
having
that,
to
Sarah.
jeopardize that?
From an
Please.
SSI point of view, you can't work. That's not exactly true. There are some things that you can do, but SSI, they approve you because you have the inability to work. Now, for the students that are before they turn 18, if they want to work, okay, they work, they get some job experience. But then if I'm on the phone with Voc Rehab, I tell them quit before we apply for SSI. And SSI will say, well, what did you do? I was a manager of popcorn at the movie theater. No, you were not. You're a helper. And why didn't it work? It's not because Deborah McFadden told me to quit. It's because it didn't work out. It didn't work out because otherwise SSI say you're competent to be a popcorn distributor at the movie theater. No, no, no. I want to study neurophysics at the university. You can't work. Now there is a program called Ticket to Work. So once you're with Voc Rehab, this is a program I worked on. It's a great program. What happened is that when we were looking at it, people were on Social Security saying, I'd like to try working. I don't want to lose my benefits. Can I try it? And so, yes, you can try working and and it's not a subtraction of dollar for dollar. There's a formula of the first $100, it's 13 cents, or it's not even worth figuring out, but a little bit they subtract. And there's a threshold on that. So certainly, yeah, go work before you turn 18. If you're applying for Social Security, stop for a little bit. And then while you're in college, if you want to work, you can do that. But you need to be cautious if what you're trying to do is get these. Remember, it's a golden ticket. We need Social Security to get fully funded for Voc Rehab or for some of these other programs.
All right. I think we're going to wrap up there. We appreciate had a lot of questions. Appreciate you all taking the time to answer those. Any last words, thoughts, advice that you want to end with, or?
Just gratitude. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers for being here and sharing your willingness to share your expertise and advice with us. We appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure to mark your calendars for our next webinar, our final webinar of the year, Connecting with Your RAYMOND community webinar, November 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us at outreach@qrcmd.org. We're more than happy to answer any questions, whether that be related to the webinar or other QRCMD programming. We would also be happy to connect you with our speakers today so that you can connect with them further and further expertise, as well as Jonathan. I believe his website is jonathangreason.com. I'm sure Kelly could put the link to that in the chat, and we'd be happy for you to connect with him further and really encourage that. Cure CMD will be hosting a comedy night fundraiser the evening of November 9th. We're kicking off our giving season with an evening of virtual entertainment from talented, affected individuals to raise funds to continue Cure CMD's mission. So we hope you'll join us for a night of laughter with your CMD community. I'm sure everyone has heard we announced earlier this week that we're headed to Philly. 2025 SciFam will be taking place next August. The family conference will be August 1st through 3rd, and our scientific meeting, which is invitation only, will be August 4th through 5th. For more info, head to scifam.info. So mark your calendars, and we look forward to being back and welcoming you all. If you found this content valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you'd consider a gift to ensure that we can continue to provide these beneficial and supportive resources to our community. So scan the QR code on your screen or head to curecmd.org/2024 to show your support for Cure CMD. It will go a long way in helping us continue the work of our mission to advance research and empower the lives of those living with CMD. To keep the conversation going, we encourage you all to share with us what you learned today by tagging us at CureCMD and tagging all the speakers as well on all social media platforms, and you can use the hashtag CMD Finances. So thanks everyone again for joining us, and have a great rest of your weekend.